Hello, this is your lonely old lady again, talking from your lonely old lady central. And I'm going to give you another chapter in some of the things that a lonely old lady has to do all by herself. And the advantages, of course, you can do what you want, when you want, how you want. But the disadvantages are you also get to do them all by yourself and sometimes have to figure out how to go about doing all of these things. So anyway, I went out in my garden earlier, actually this summer, and I had, like last year, I plant gardens. And last year I planted onions, green onions, in a plot that I didn't normally plant them in. And they didn't seem to grow very well. And so I just said, oh, well, you know, they'll either die or they'll grow, one or the other. And so I kind of forgot about them. And so over the winter, we had a lot of moisture. We had a lot of snow covering most of the winter. They were covering all of the gardens and all of the plants and everything. So in this spring, I noticed that they were starting to grow. And I went, oh, wow. You know, they say that onions are winter crops. You can plant them over the winter and get them in the spring. And I didn't believe it, but now I guess I made a believer out of me because these green onions were growing. The problem was that I sort of ignored them and just let them grow. And all of a sudden I went out there and I thought, oh my gosh, these things are getting awfully big. And I still kind of ignored them. I didn't get them pulled out. I thought, well, they're going to be hard to pull out. So I pulled them out when the ground was relatively warm. And these are absolutely the biggest green onions you ever saw in your life. That is one of these green onions. And you see how long the leaves are, extremely long. Every one of these green onions are like this, and there's a whole pile of them, if you can see them right there. So I'm sitting here wondering, what do I want to do with these green onions? And so I thought about it and thought about it and thought about it for a while. And what I decided was that I need to use them because the onion part of it, the bottom of them, that is just a regular onion. It's just bigger than it would normally be. And in fact, it's starting to grow a little bit of a skin like a regular Visalia or an onion like that would do. And so I cut some up and I put them in a salad and they taste just like onions. And so I figured I could do that and fry them or whatever I needed to do. And maybe take a couple of them, but that's okay because they didn't cost me anything. And so what I decided I was going to do was I'm going to take and cut the onion part of it off, because the leaves and stuff of a green onion normally you can chop up and you can put in your salad and your food and everything, but these are so long and so old that they're very tough. And so I don't feel that they would be probably very good to put into a salad anyway. So what I'm going to do is start cutting these up, and I think I'm going to put them in a plastic bag. But typically onions need air or they will rot fairly easily. So I'm probably going to put them in a plastic bag and take a little knife and poke some holes in it and at least put them out in my shed. That's where I usually kept my onions, my regular Visalias or whatever I planted. I would put them in nylons and put them in my shed. And the shed was kept cool enough, even in the summer, that they didn't damage them in any way. So then I would probably have plenty of time that I can use these onions up instead of letting any of them go to waste. So stand by, and I'm going to start cutting some of these onions up. And I'll let you see what I'm doing and report on what's happening at the end of it. So I will get to these onions and start cutting them. And what I'm going to use is I'm going to use just a steak knife. It's a serrated knife that makes it fairly easy to cut through these. And I'm going to go ahead and leave the roots on them. I'll cut the roots off of them when I use them. So I'm going to cut them about up to the necks here. And that's where the green, actually the green part of it starts. So I'm just going to cut them here and put these aside somewhere and just do each one of these. There's another one, and this one's a little bit longer and not quite as stout, so I'm going to cut it about the same place too. And actually, unless you really dislike the smell of onions, I happen to like the smell of onions, and I like the taste of onions. I do like onions. So these actually smell pretty good. I think somebody coming into my kitchen may disagree with me, but that's okay. Now this is a smaller one, so I could actually probably use that just in the salad as well as the greens. So I'm not going to cut this one. And the same with this. This is another smaller one that apparently didn't grow like the other ones did. And then this one is a big one, so I'm going to cut it. Let's see, right about here. Now this is another smaller one that I could use in my salad just the way they are with some of the greens. And it's a good thing to use some of the greens. The greens are really good for a lot of things. They've got good nutrition, greens of any vegetable. They've got good nutrition. But one of the things I discovered recently was that I've had some problems with my blood pressure being a little bit high. And so I've been having trouble getting it down. And so between being able to exercise a little more and cut my working hours, I've managed to get my blood pressure down, but not as much as it should be. So I went to visit my son, who also has a problem with high blood pressure. And so he started questioning me on my diet. And the things he was questioning me on was what I'm eating is in the way of vegetables. I says, well, I eat salads. What do you put in your salads? Well, I have this packaged iceberg lettuce packages with it's got carrots and stuff, other stuff with it, so I don't have to cut it all up. And he says, what about greens, like dark greens? I says, dark greens? I said, are you talking about like spinach? And he says, yeah. And I says, well, I like spinach, but I haven't been really putting much of it in my food. And I never really thought about it. And he says, you can put spinach in just about anything. And I know I have been putting it in my protein drinks once in a while. So while I was there, I of course was starting to eat more dark green vegetables. There's dark green vegetables in everything because he said it brings your blood pressure down. That's what the doctor told him. And lo and behold, when I started eating the dark green vegetables a little bit more, and I started taking my blood pressures in the morning, they are down to almost normal. And it's just a simple little thing in diet, and changing your diet just a little bit, and a little bit more exercise, and it just made a big difference in my blood pressure. So it's something to remember for you older people, even younger people that have problems with blood pressure. You might want to consider using, the dark greens, the darker greens, and even when you have your green onions, I hope you're using those green stems, washing them and using those in your salads as well, or even in cooking, and get more of these dark green vegetables and spinach. And I know a lot of people don't like spinach, but spinach would also be a good one to include in your diet. And I actually have, and I've included spinach in all of my salads that I make. When I decide to make just a simple salad for dinner or something like that, then I have been using the spinach a lot more. And it does help my blood pressure, helps my health all over, and I feel much better. So now I've basically got my onions, and even in that big pile looked like a whole bunch of onions, but this is the only thing that I got on these onions, was that many. The rest of them are the smaller ones that I can just cut up and put in my salads this afternoon or whenever I'm going to make my next salad. And since I've been not wanting to really cook a big dinner because it takes as long to cook for one person as it does to cook for 6 people, so I really have to be in the mood to cook something. So I've been making salads for dinners, and coming out okay health-wise, at least so far. So for now that these onions are all done, and it's, guess what, raining outside again, and it's supposed to rain for the next week. I did get my lawn done, and I got most of the trimming done, but I didn't get the trimming around the trees and around the poles and stuff like that. And guess what? With all this rain, they're going to be growing some more. And so there's just a never-ending battle with this rain this year. It's good for the water. It's good to give us water from the mountains and all this kind of stuff. And I was hoping that it would stop raining this afternoon, and I'm hoping it does so that I can get out in my garden, which I started rototill. I did one rototill on it, but I couldn't pull up all of the weeds because they were too close to the edge of my driveway, and I didn't want to have my rototiller tongs hit those and wind up either breaking or being dulled by it. So I need to take out a shovel while it's still wet out there so that they're easier to get out. So that may be another project for this afternoon, and I may actually show you what that garden now looks like and what it's going to look like at the end, and we'll report on that as well if it stops raining. So for now, this is a day in the life of a lonely old lady, and I hope your day goes really well, and I hope sometimes that you take a little bit of hints from me, and you young people give a help to your older people, to your mothers and your grandmothers and your grandfathers and your fathers that are getting aged, and help them along with some of the things they need to do. And those of you that try to do some of the things I do, don't overdo it. I happen to be pretty fit because of all the exercise I did when I was younger and still do. So I don't want you guys to wear yourselves out too much. And if you start feeling tired, take the rest. Take the break and rest. That's what I do. When I'm really tired, I'll take a break. And I took about 3 days this last weekend. So even a lonely old lady takes a rest. So bye for now.